Suicide claimed more Japanese lives in October than 10 months of COVID. Japan has never recovered from World War II. Remember, did we even show? I'm not sure if we showed. We didn't show the video. But did you see the thing, I don't know, about 2 weeks ago? Where in Japan, you can now get a gadget that feels like a human hand. And so you can walk along with this human hand in your hand, and it'll act like a human hand, so you feel like you're holding hands with someone because everyone there is so lonely. They don't have children. The Japanese are disappearing from the face of the earth. In a couple generations, they will be gone. There will not be any Japanese left. They have no children. They have no marriages. They're disappearing. They are not reproducing. And they, of all people, have been the first ones to mask forever. And it's broken down all human contact. And they don't get married. They don't have kids anymore. They're disappearing. They're lonely. They're building robots to take care of the elderly because there's not enough youth to take care of the old people. And so suicide claimed more Japanese lives in October than 10 months of COVID did in Japan. Suicide. Yes.
This is where we're going. People need to see the big picture here. The idea you posted on over the weekend about wanting to cut 2/3 of the population out from the face of the earth.
Yeah, yeah.
This is about the things that I don't know about you, but I remember this in grade school, having this conversation where the teachers were introducing the concept of euthanasia.
Yeah.
And we thought, well, okay, you're talking about sick people, really, really old sick people. And then, no. You reach a certain age and society doesn't need you anymore. And I remember as a child, the sixth graders got really angry with the teachers over this. But today, does anybody care?
Oh no, the Great Reset. The only way that the Green New Deal and the Great Reset can be done is if you have far fewer humans on Earth than there are humans on Earth right now. And so you have to reverse population growth. You have to get it back down to at most 2 billion people. And we're way above that right now. And so suicide, good thing for the Great Reset. Transgenderism, destroying a woman's body so she can never have children, great. Have you noticed that female to male transgenderism is the thing, not the other way around? They don't care if a guy wants to act like a gal. I mean, as long as he goes all the way, so he can't have any children in the future, that's a good thing. But it's especially the females because they're the ones that have babies. And so for every one young female that you can ruin her life so she can never be a mother, that's one person that'll never reproduce. That's what they want. That's what they want, the Great Reset. So suicide, great thing. Euthanasia, great thing. All those old folks dying in homes alone, great thing for the Great Reset. They love it. It's what they want. It's their thing. It's their thing. In fact, article today, elderly woman euthanized to avoid anguish of lockdown loneliness. An elderly Canadian woman was killed by her doctor because she would rather be dead than go through another COVID lockdown. When it looked like she would have to be confined to her room for 2 weeks, she asked for and received the lethal jab due to declining mental health and vitality. Quote, Russell, described by her family as exceptionally social and spry, was one such person. Her family says she chose a medically assisted death, MAID, in Canada, after she declined so sharply during lockdown that she didn't want to go through more isolation this winter. This time, doctors approved her. Russell would not have to go through another lockdown in her care home. She has truly did not believe that she wanted to try another one of those 2-week confinements into her room, her daughter said. But note, for her death, she could be surrounded by friends and family. Think about this. When 90-year-old Nancy Russell died last month, she was surrounded by friends and family. They clustered around her bed, singing a song she had chosen to send her off as a doctor helped her through a medically assisted death. So, companionship to be made dead, but not to remain alive. And her family thinks this was a fine option, demonstrating how the social mindset becomes twisted by euthanasia consciousness. But we are told killing to end suffering is so compassionate. Lockdowns are measures of good public health. So you actually have people being allowed to kill themselves so as to avoid further lockdowns. Even for older people, even for elderly people, COVID is still massively survivable, even for the elderly. But nope, death sentence for them all. Separate them from their families. No holiday, no Christmas, nothing to look forward to. The Great Reset. That's the mindset. Let's get rid of them. They're getting rid of them. They're doing a good. Hey, the Democrats did a great job in New York in getting rid of old people, didn't they? Thousands of them. Thousands of them. And they're getting awards for it. that's the amazing thing. They're getting awards for doing it. Cuomo. They're acting awards. Yeah. That does tell you something. Yep. Talk about evil. But speaking of evil, let's talk about China. Because China is evil. Not the Chinese people. The Chinese people are under an evil regime. We need to recognize that. And the Chinese Communist Party, also known as the CCP, also known as Satan, drafted new rules this week prohibiting foreigners from discussing religion with Chinese citizens. Remember, this is, if you want to see what technological totalitarianism, hard totalitarianism looks like, look to China. And that's what's coming our direction. And then, I need to buy, because I don't know where my copy is. Maybe I could find my copy. That would be the best, because it was from 1980, 78 or something like that. I read 1984 before 1984. Okay, that was the cool part of reading 1984 before 1984. Anybody who reads it now is seeing it from the other side. But I need to have a copy of 1980. I need to just get hold of all of the various novels. just go, here's our new prophecy section over here. But remember, 1984, key to everything was the destruction of language. Destruction of language. Remember the Newspeak Dictionary? They kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And the whole idea was to limit. This was Orwell's way of addressing the issue that pharmaceuticals address in This Perfect Day, Brave New World, Equilibrium, where you have the drugs that do the mind control. In Orwell, what you do is you destroy the human capacity to express emotion and feeling and thought by getting rid of the words that would express ideas of beauty, transcendent meaning, things like that. So you just keep making the language more and more sparse and more barren. It's an attack on language. And what you do, of course, is then you change history and you change the meaning of language all at the same time. So, Winston's job is to, when the party makes somebody disappear who used to be high up in the party, now you've got to make it appear that that person was never a part of the party in the first place because the party's never wrong. Or if you start fighting somebody else in the war, then you change all the newspapers in the past. You've always been fighting these people. You've never been fighting your allies were now the people you used to be fighting. And so you change stuff. That's how it works. So, China's Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Justice, published a list of restrictions on foreigners seeking to spread religious extremism or undermine China's national or ethnic unity through religion. I mean, this is 1984, all over the place. The Ministry of Justice. The Ministry of Justice has just published Injustice. You're going to see so much injustice done in the future in the name of justice. And you know what? Every woke Christian is guilty of helping it happen because you accepted the redefinition of justice from biblical parameters to Marxist parameters. You did it. You're responsible for it. You can still repent in this life. We will just be waiting for you to do so. So foreigners would be prohibited from the following activities. And boy, I'll tell you, these are broad enough. Basically, foreigners would be prohibited from breathing. So interfering with or dominating the affairs of Chinese religious groups. Now, I know exactly what this is about. The Chinese home churches want everything we can provide to them in the way of doctrine, church history, theology. They want that. They need that. They can't have the big, huge libraries we have and all the freedom to publish and things like that. So they need that. So that's called dominating. That's dominating the affairs of Chinese religious groups. Advocating extremist religious thoughts. Do you want anything more broad and you can cram anything you want into it than that? Extremist religious thoughts. Yeah, well, come deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me is about as extremist a religious thought as you can get, right? So you can't advocate extremist religious thoughts. Using religion to conduct terrorist activities, like the government blowing up churches, that's a terrorist activity. That's probably a specifically anti-Muslim one right there. Interfering with the appointment or management of Chinese clergy members. In other words, the Chinese state gets to determine who the Chinese clergy members are, because they have a state registry. And remember, what did France say just a few weeks ago? We want a French version of Islam. Well, they want a Chinese version of Christianity, which isn't Christianity and isn't attractive to anybody, so it'll die. That's the whole point. That's the reason for it. So interfering with the appointment or management of Chinese clergy members. So when the Roman Catholic Church says, we will assign our own bishops, which they then capitulated on under Francis, if I recall correctly. I didn't follow all of that, but my recollection was that Francis choked on that one. That's what they're talking about. Illegal preaching among Chinese citizens. So if you that would be any preaching. That's just proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ. Converting new believers. We cannot convert new believers in China if you're a foreigner. Well, and you can't as a Chinese person either. Accepting religious donations from Chinese citizens. And carrying out religious education and training. They want to isolate the believing Chinese church as much as is humanly possible to try to kill it off. That's what this is all about. So part of this is about the Christian church, part of this is about the Muslims. But this is your CCP, your Chinese Communist Party. This is your secular worldview. These are the people that the leftist liberals in Canada, France, all across Europe, and many of your leading lights in the Democratic Party in the United States look to and are bankrolled by these people. So you think that might be coming to a United States near you in the not too distant future? If you're going to laugh at that, I simply have to ask you a question. Why do you think not? Well, we have a constitution. So do the Chinese. But as long as you control the language, then you control the interpretation of any written document. And that's why there are 4 people on the Supreme Court, really probably more than that, in differing levels, but at least 4 people, 3 openly, 1 moving that way. Isn't that the way it normally is? How many justices have you seen over the years who, once they got on the court, moved right or left? Almost always left. It's almost always left. And that's what Roberts has done. But you have at least 3, maybe 4 on the court who already believe that the Constitution is a living document. Those words don't. What did the founding fathers mean? We don't care. Some would even say, epistemologically speaking, we can't know. We can't know what they meant. And so we have to fill their words with meanings. And that's how we can find new rights and all the rest of this kind of stuff. And that's happening. We have a constitution, and it's clear as to what it was supposed to mean in regards to the worldview out of which it was drawn. But once you establish people who have absolute right of interpretation, and language can be formed into meaning whatever it means, whatever you want it to mean, a written document's irrelevant. Has no meaning any longer. So I want to ask those of you who are sitting there go, oh, there's nothing strange about the massive lurch to the left. Nothing strange about us being trapped in our homes for months and months on end. There's nothing strange about elected governors all of a sudden having powers that they've never, ever had before, all because of a virus that I had a friend, and I know that the virus can be involved in bringing about death in someone with comorbidity factors. I recognize that. But I have a friend, I won't mention right now, who has all sorts of comorbidity factors. And it was barely a nuisance to him. Blew right through it. That's what the vast majority of people experience. And yet, the panic that has been created, so out of proportion with any other disease, equally and far more dangerous diseases that have been around for a long time. But you see, that's the problem. That's why those diseases aren't politically useful. They've been around for a long time. We've already meningitis, hepatitis, tuberculosis. We've heard about them forever. That's not gonna. You can't put tuberculosis up on the screen on MSNBC and CNN for month, day after day, hour after hour, day after day, week after week, month after month, and with an ever-increasing number there. That's not going to work, but it's worked with COVID. It's worked with COVID. You create the panic, and panicked people will give up anything. They'll give up anything, and that's exactly what we're seeing going on around us.
One last thing. Your talk about getting all the dystopian novels and putting them on the shelf behind there. We actually have some people who think that you and I have kind of fallen into some kind of dystopian nightmare, and that we're not saying that these guys were prophets. We're saying that they wrote the playbooks.
Well, they saw the trends. They saw what could happen.
And what we're seeing unfold right now is following those same trends. And going back, I'm positive I can go back as far as 20 years ago on this program in audio only, and you're telling people secularism is the threat to our future. Secularism is the threat to our freedoms.
That's true.
Go back 15 years, and you're doing debates on Islam, and people are talking about how the Muslims are going to blow us all up. They're all going to do these things, and you're telling them, and they're really angry for you telling them.
Yeah.
You're telling them Islam is not the threat, nearly the threat that secularism is. And secularism will be the thing that threatens both Islam and Christianity and all of religion. And folks, if you go back and take a good hard listen to those programs, maybe that'll piece it all together for you.
Yeah.
That you suddenly realize, you know what? There really is something going on. Come on.
I don't know how anyone...
Come on, man.
I just do not know how anyone can look and can... Well, and this is what they're not doing. They're not standing back and getting the big view. And just for a moment, think about what the world was like 1 year ago. Just go back 1 year. And ask yourself the question, if someone had walked up to you 1 year ago and said, would you be willing to have massive increases in suicides, destroy 2/3 of the businesses of your neighbors, put almost everybody in a situation of being dependent upon public assistance, destroy everybody's savings, and lock everybody in their houses over a virus that has a 99.95% survivability rate for people under the age of 70. Do you think this nation would be willing to sacrifice everything and, in fact, sacrifice its autonomy, become a part of a global technocracy, and that people all around the world would do the same thing?